after contentious debate with myself, which sounds insane, I looked over 4 Transformer scripts, 4 of the larger ones and the longer ones. That would be sort of the mid-season 2-parters and 2.5 to 3-parters. There were many choices. There was Redemption. We could have done that one. A little dark, sort of like the last one. We passed on Redemption. It was basically like more of a season finale. Then we came up with we're going to do Stranded, and then we're like, well, that one's kind of complicated. That's a Robotech crossover, and we kind of did that with Children of the Shadow. So that one's probably last or way off in the future. But we had a lot of we have several regular episodes as well, and then we had Underground, which is technically up from Underground and down to Underground. Down to Underground, the Underground Saga, Ivy Bondling. Also, Redemption is Ivy Bondling, and some of the others. And well, we didn't want a full 90-minute movie. Wanted to do just a regular episode, and Underground is kind of complicated too. It includes more of the female Autobots, which is fine, but it's one of the. Let's try to be more serious. So, we've been last week. We did an extremely serious, important episode of Transformers. We did this episode about issues. We did a story about issues. We did a character study of Springer. Oh, incidentally, Amazon. Amazon so loved it. It's a Springer in the box from the movie Springer. So, yeah. Generation Springer. 30th anniversary Generation Springer. If you want to go on Amazon and buy, not me, I'm not sponsoring it. I'm just saying if you want to go buy the Springer from the movie, go on Amazon and get the 30th anniversary Springer. The Autobot Springer, Transformers Generation Springer. If you really like the movie, get the Springer. The RC is a 30th anniversary Transformers Generation RC as well. And the cup is a 30th anniversary Generations cup. So if you want to get that, here's the cup. And and I knocked the thing off, so now it's screwed. That's just Prime and RC, who is up here. And I knocked it off again. RC. And yeah, so that's also just Prime. So yeah, if you want to get Springer, go on the Amazon, get it. The boxed one that we bought special after the movie because we really wanted a copy of Springer because he was missing his plates. Immediately lost the gun to the cup. It's on the floor somewhere. So as you know, this was a character study of Springer and RC and the relationship, according to the fans, shipping story. But also it had the last episode had the rapey Shockwave. Shockwave apparently at some point earlier, they don't show it, had apparently accosted and violated Night Racer. Rhakshi may be the result of that. So Shockwave was on the planet in the other story, in this other timeline doing that. Maybe not. Maybe not. But yeah, because it doesn't make sense that Transformers would do that. But it was an experiment. The Transformers copying deviant humans, because you figure Decepticons would probably do that. So they were copying the humans so well that one of them ended up being a bad guy, and rapey. So don't do that. That's not good. Also a previous character called Chas, who was loosely based on somebody this person knew. I do not know who these people are. this Crothers knew this person. Loosely based on this other person. She apparently killed herself. Maybe not because of a similar thing, but so yeah, there's a lot of angst on that multi-user shared hallucination, the board, the Trans-Alt board. There's also another character who is the stranded script. That guy is also dead. So, but not of the same thing, not for the same reason. He died of something else. Which is messed up. But so we decided that this is way too dark for to do another dark one, or to do an expensive one. We came across this one by Jazzy, Sibling Rivalry, and they renamed it Rhakshi, because Rhakshi, we were Rhakshi and Sport, having an adventure. Jazz and Jazzy was the original script. We don't know who Jazzy was. It was apparently completely a pen name. That's one of the people from the board, one of the Raksha people. She wrote this clever little fun story about two sibling robots. Fun story about two sibling robots, and that's the next one we're going to do. So it's only about 70 good pages of script, but there's a lot of dialogue. It's about 80 pages of script. So there's a lot of dialogue, but yeah, so it's probably going to be an 80-minute movie. And it has, it also has Windbreaker in it. Oh my God. So yeah, this is so anyway. Transformers. Next one will be Rhakshi. Jazzy, Sibling Rivalry. It's a fun one. Real brief. This is Calcat, the Calcatster. You don't need to use any of the other footage from months ago concerning the next episode of All Transformers MUSH, because it's going to kind of be recapped. Real brief right here. The next episode is going to be called Sibling Rivalry. It was originally based on a story about Jazz's sister, Jazzy. This character made this up because her name was Jazzy, apparently. Rhakshi is involved in this version, not Jazzy. Jazz has been changed to Sport. It's the little sports car that was introduced in the pilot. So the two younger Autobots get involved in some shenanigans in the story. Basically, there are cameos by several Transformers, but mainly it's them getting into trouble on Cybertron. So that's the basic idea. Thought that it would be a fun story to take off from middle of last May, late last May, the 19th, done a dark episode. We wanted to do a comedy, fun episode that was sort of supplanted, and of course it will also seek to awaken the Me Too movement people who will again like this episode because it's about a feisty fembot who does stuff. Because, yeah, even though this was the 90s, it was a while back when the story was actually written. But in this version, it's clear that that they had that in mind back then. Strong feminine characters, female characters doing awesome things. So in this case, getting into trouble. The characters of Rhakshi and Sport were introduced via the bonding, cloning of four different characters, two different couples in the pilot, The Corrosion War Without End, and now we see them as robots, I guess young adults or something. Instead of it being Prowl, because it doesn't really fit. Oh, Prowl is in it, but instead of it being Jazz and his alleged sister, who doesn't really exist, it's these other two, and it fits better with them because then it's not. You don't have to have him go out of character and act like he's not really Jazz. He's someone else that clearly is the inspiration for, and we don't know who. It's clearly an inspiration for someone else, but we don't know who. We don't know who this author was that was named Jazzy. There are Courage Jazzies, but we have no idea. It's not, obviously not those people. So, yeah, so interesting. This particular story does not need a byline because we can't prove who did it. There's no need to go into extra detail. we'll start filming on the set on the larger studio, not here, but in the larger one. And we'll go through the episode. It's the script is 78 pages, which in a typical Transtech movie, 60 pages translates to roughly 60 minutes, roughly there, and so 78 would make it just under that of a movie. It's not quite a movie, and it's a fanfic. I read it again just now, so it's fun. So if you enjoy it, I'm sure there'll be anti-feminists and anti-SJW people will complain, oh, it's all social justice warrior stuff. It isn't, though, because it was written in the 90s. There's nothing to do with that. So it's not. So yeah, you can complain about it all you want, but we just won't print your comments and complain. So complain about the other one, too. Didn't print your comments. But yeah, this is all Transformers MUSH. It has angst in it. They all do. Yeah, that's the nature of what it is. So, grunge era, late 90s and early 2000s Transformer stuff. Fans that wanted to get back to the original series. There were plenty of them. Yeah. Anyway, so they'll be in it. Yeah, Transformers. Okay. I think it's the 4th. Yeah. Glorious new set. Excellent. So, no extra footage. Jump right into it. Late already. First day of shooting after, making of. Okay. First day of shooting on anything with Transtech in several weeks. Last ended production. Released on May 19th. The episode. Transition to Wrath, and this is called Sibling Rivalry, and this has it was a Jazzy story. It's called Jazzy. We don't know who that author was. There is nobody named Jazzy that we could find. There are other Jazzies, of course. That's a really common name, so it's possible to know. But Axion, however, was a Transformer, and Axion is mentioned. So we have an Axion. We actually have one. So that was cool. We didn't know it, but we have one. And he's not here at the moment, but it's one of the Velocitron Autobots. Anyway, so yeah, was introduced later. So he's not a fan character. Anyway, here we have Rhakshi arriving on Cybertron. So it's not Jazzy anymore, it's a Rhakshi story. And she's arriving on Cybertron. And it is several months after the events of the last story. But it's all a multiverse, so it's not canon with the other story. It just sort of is. So the characters are similar because there are characters that show up in the story. But anyway, so let's start this. A little bit of what we're going to do here, just to test that out. So we did start filming, but yeah. So that's probably the end of this for the evening. Yeah. Greetings, Captain. And welcome to the set of Transformers Sibling Rivalry. The Transformers story. Real brief. I'm not going to make these making of things very long for this one. It's a 70-minute episode. So, so this was the introduction of Sport and Rhakshi. We set this up years ago, months ago, I should say, with Corrosion of War Without End, where we set these two characters up to be introduced. They're basically Carta. They're being played by Transformers, and so there's Sport and Rhakshi, or Sport and Rhakshi. It said Scout in the script, but it's Sport. Sport Jr. and Rhakshi, who is the child of Night Racer. So they're step siblings, which would only work if Night Racer or the other one married the other guy afterward. Maybe she did. Maybe she just took them in. I think she just took them in is what happened. We took him in, yeah. It was a younger brother sibling. And as you know from the Corrosion of War That End, Rhakshi was the savior of the ship when she killed the Scorponok-looking bad guy by cutting his head off and then stomping on it. So, yeah. Anyway, so now she's in this other story. It's been a couple months. She's on probation. She's on Cybertron, which is kind of in the script, actually. The script was about somebody named Jazzy, who was literally supposed to be Jazz's sister. Not terribly an original idea. I mean, Jazz, come on, think something clever like Blues or something. But this was probably written by some sort of young adult at the time who, in the 90s, who decided, hey, I'm going to put my character in here and it's going to be Jazz. So it's a Mary Sue for the writer of the story. His name is Jazzy. We'll list it in the credits, but we have no idea which Jazzy or who Jazzy is. It's in the credits. It'll be in the credits. So, yeah, so this opening scene is them on the launch bay on Cybertron, which is a redress of partly a Starcracker set. The Chimera set, Star Trek Chimera set. Part of it is, we have a larger panoramic view of it this time around. So the visuals are clearly more this way, 16 by 9 than they were 6 by 9 with the other ones. So it's a little wider. You won't notice it because the film is still the same as with the other ones, with Transitions of Wrath. It looks like the lighting in here is really bad for night shots so far, so we're not going to do night shots with this. It's going to be during the day because we don't have enough lighting. So that was something to check out as the sun goes down here. That was a little brief of it, or actually in the sport. And our intro, we have Jazz is in it. I did put Jazz back in it, and Jazz and Prowl in it, because then it sets up their dynamic, which is well done in the story. So that's in there too. And I basically gave the line about the Energon bar to Jazz and the other guy instead of the girl, because then the scene just visually looks better that way. So there's always a few changes when you try to make a story that's mainly telling to making it a little bit of showing and a little bit of visually interesting scene. So to make it turn this story, which was not done as a script, into an episode of Transformers requires some changing the dynamics a little around to make it look visually interesting, like we did with the Springer one recently, like a couple of months ago. Released on the 19th. But this one, barring any complications, shouldn't be any, should be out next week, Tuesday. So that'll be cool. You'll get a brand new one pretty soon. And the script is just under 80 minutes, 70 minutes. So that's fine. There is no length thing on the trans movies. They're basically movies like for Netflix or something. They're not Netflix. We're putting it on YouTube for free. It's completely free. You don't pay for it at all. It's YouTube, not Netflix. So you get to see that, and that is Sibling Rivalry. I decided on this one because it's not a Mary Sue of me or anything but I just thought it would be fun to have an episode where we have quirky characters going back and forth. Oddly enough, she says in the beginning of the thing that it's not a parody and it's not supposed to be the person that wrote it. It's not supposed to be witty and it's not supposed to be funny, but it is. It's all those things. It's not dark or angsty at all. So that's why we wanted it. It's very, very different. So the tone is clearly different. A little bit of an intro here. I think I've already discussed several months ago the script because we thought we were going to film it within like June. It didn't end up. June went by, July went by, and now it's early August. It didn't end up in June. So we had a hiatus briefly. After this, we get to do the next one, which should be Redemption, or could be The Stranded. Decided yet. Now, if we do The Stranded, we have to leave out the parts that we already shot for Transformers Robotech. The parts that ended up as Transtech, because those are already filmed. We don't need to redo those, or have to do them differently. Or Space Bridge and Endless Circle, which also had some elements of that in there. So we kind of can't do that again. We have to to do something that isn't Endless Circle again. We don't really need to do those parts. We don't need to have Rick Hunter get home or whatever. We don't have to have the Invid get home too. We don't have to cross over with Lancer and the Invid and have that happen in that story. Well, we'll see. Maybe we won't use it at all just because it's got a lot of baggage with that other stuff that I just mentioned. It's like, well, do we want to use that one? Do we really want to? It'd have to be the Rebels and not G.I. Joes. It'd be kind of awkward. Yeah, I don't know about that one. But Sibling Rivalry was fine. We're trying to look for self-contained ones that are within the mush. And this one in Redemption and I believe Underground is fine. That's the Abby Bonleen, so is Redemption. There's David. There's a guy named David something. Esman or something. There's this one guy that died. That his script is posthumously going to be created. I think that's the Stranded one. Yeah, another reason not to do it necessarily. He died years ago. We don't know who it was, but he died. But yeah, so there's complications with that particular script. Doing that just because it's kind of weird. We'll have to check the dailies of this little bit that we shot and see whether it doesn't look awful or nothing. And as the light goes down behind me, it's really getting dark back there. It's really quick. I look like sardonic, like I'm in some kind of evil base of operations. If there's a light over this way a little bit, yeah. Some different camera angle, but yeah. So the only message is girl power again, which will annoy the alt-right people who see the alt thing and think alt-right. It's not. It's Transformers MUSH, multi-user serial hallucination. It's not referring to alt-right at all. It's referring to like alternative Transformers, basically other version of Transformers, alternative Transformers. Oh, and somebody else has done a Transformers meets Robotech stop motion that was about 5 minutes. It was kind of cool on YouTube. So shout out to that. That was cool. Yeah, but with some it had some. It had a Skull Leader, and it had I think it was the special edition one, and it had two of the those the British masterpiece. They weren't masterpiece. What were those things? British Autobot cars, and it had Starscream, masterpiece Starscream in it. But then it kept changing to Generations Starscream. It's kind of odd. Apparently he didn't want to accidentally break his masterpiece Starscream. Anyway, so it's not good to do that. Today, I have to find the head of Silverbolt, even though he's not in the movie anywhere. I don't think. But I had to find his head. I had to search all over the head. Couldn't find it. Finally found it and put it back on. Also, I found the guns for the Rainmakers. They call him Nova Storm now, but he's like Sunstorm. This guy. Yeah. They've changed some of the names. This guy's got Nova Storm, Sunstorm, and Acid Storm, and the other one. Yeah. These were the Target exclusives, and they've now gone up in price. I got them when they were not so up in price. Oh my goodness, I burped. Several months ago. I don't know if the Netflix guys like it or not, but it's very similar to their stuff. Very similar to that Siege War for Cybertron thing. Of course, we probably were inspired by the same source, the game. Same source. So of course it's going to be similar. Because it's basically the mush done IDW style. We went for less IDW style. We went for more late 90s, early 2000s style, just to make it different, so it wouldn't be instantly dated. We took out a lot of the dated stuff, tried not to use the slang, so it wouldn't appear dated. So there were some lines in here that I changed that would have been very slangy in the 90s. Like one of them saying, "Not," whatever. No, that would have been really, really slangy. It's just like, no, that's supposed to be 2020. Yeah, so yeah, anyway, there you go. Okay, going to that other camera was all B-roll, actually. This is A-roll. Still the 7th. It's the 7th of August. And here's some, is they gonna fight the fembots or something? Yes. Okay, this is still August the 7th. And this is not a scene pickup because it's technically just a continuation of the scene. So, anyway, heroes. This would be page 18, the beginning of page 18. Script. So that's where that is. That's making of 2 seconds here. Yeah, that's enough for the evening, I think, just because, yeah, it's kind of wonky. But I think it works. So. Yeah. So it's still the 7th, and we've decided to go through the Optimus Prime scene. So yeah. Okay. The 7th. The 7th. There's no time crunch on this, incidentally. But it's the 7th, and we're going to do the scene where they approach Sports, or I've been saying Sport. This is his name, right? Sports' pad. Sports' pad. And these two, they're apparently out front. I don't know if we actually see inside the pad in this version of the story or not. Probably not. And they're basically, these two are basically like chilling out here, and them to stop yammering. It's basically the whole scene. So we're going to just go film it. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get around to filming anything yesterday. I filmed a little today, but it's really hot up here, so probably this is the end of the scene for today. I don't know if all this will be out by the 10th. It'll probably be finished by the 10th, but not out yet. Yeah, so, but it's still, we got up to page 9, and got them inside the quarters and out, and met with the robots. That's something. It's not on a time schedule. It isn't really, so. We've got to watch the dailies and see whether they look good. That's pretty much it. Slight changes involving what they were before, because in the original script it was Jazz and Jazzy, and now it's Sport and Rhakshi. So, but I had to adjust the story so it's that in their sparks were recreated to make them, and their sparks remembered back to when they were other Transformers beforehand, and these two guys apparently that were meeting them recognized them somehow. Maybe they sensed them somehow. Maybe they could do that. And so they sensed them, and they're well. Also, they were making noise, and the indication is that they knew each other years ago. This other guy was apparently, she was delivering food, I guess, or something, and so there's a backstory. She was a delivery bot. And there was a battle. So, yeah, backstory for Rhakshi before she became Rhakshi, which is kind of interesting. I just thought to throw that in there, a little backstory. Also, it turns out Sport was not Sport either. Before, in some other life, he was also sort of a worker bot. Didn't say what kind. Yeah, so stepsisters. And, yeah, it's not related in any... It's not nepotism in any way, because it's not... This is not something I wrote. This is something from... it would be intensely more sarcastic if it was something I actually wrote, but it isn't. It's from someone named Jazzy, and we don't know who that is. Well, we're going to put the name in the credits to say who it is, but we don't really know somebody in all Transformers MUSH. It's not anyone current, and it's not based on anything current. And that's what I meant when I said, well, it doesn't matter, because film. It's an SD card. On this particular SD card, there's 21 minutes of battery left, which isn't a whole lot. We're going to do a little bit of filming, but might become a little incoherent and weird, because a couple hours ago, I had a tooth filling done, and on this side, and it's like, yeah, it might start to become funky, so we'll see. But yeah, it's about 3 o'clock on the 7th of Friday, and we're going to do a scene involving the Transformers. and meeting up with the pink bots, as they call them. In the story, that's what she called them, pink bots, the female Autobots. Yeah, we have a Gestalt, and we're going to show that. Anyway, but we're not going to show the Gestalt, just the members of the team. Yeah. Yeah, so let's start filming and see what happens. There was a funny part at the dentist, though. There was a scene in which the I guess it was the thing for squirting the water machine thing. I've known the dentist since I was a teenager, so yeah. Ironically, yeah. But anyway, so like the guy was like, the dental assistant are going to do stuff, and the spray of water from one of the sprayer things went over my face. Was before anything happened, and it was funny. It was like, it's like Flashdance. Ah, man. Anyway, so it was all. Not sure why the sprayer popped off and sprayed me, but it did. Anyway, so let's do the thing. Anyway. Okay, so there's literally 5 minutes left. I'm gonna show her moving around. Instead of Mirage, it's Nightbird. Okay. August 9th, page 40. And here we go. Yeah. So Dynamite. That's at the end of the taping for tonight. It is getting dark. This is the end of the scene. So here it is, the end of the scene with them. Yeah. The 8th of August. And I've got nothing extra except there are some minor changes to the scene that's up next. The Dinobots are not in the story, just because their scale for the smaller Dinobots is about the same size, and it looked really strange. So they're not in this. Instead, it's the Fembots who I introduced earlier, and they're gonna find them behind a wall panel. Yeah, so let's do that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, it's the 8th. Still doing the 8th. There's a little making of thing. This is for the terms of editing the movie together later. This is a scene in the script where the Dinobots were going to show up, and she was going to color the Dinobots with paint on them. But we don't have Dinobots that are the scale of these figures. They are actually only a little bigger than the figures. It would look really ridiculous and be impossible to film. So yeah, they're just the Dinobot Gestalt Volcanicus is just a little bigger than it, which kind of sucks. About as big as they are when they're all together. So he's not that big. He should be bigger, but he's not. So we can't really use that. Or the other ones. So I decided, no Dinobots. I will just reenact a sleepover party, slumber party. Have 3 older sisters. I know what those are. Yeah. Nieces and nephews. Yeah, so, but yeah, this is not after them. These characters are in no way modeled after me or my sisters at all. It's just a coincidence. It happens to connect because it's funny. But yeah, so I decided the gag should be topical, since they mentioned another topical show in there. And since Mulan is not just a live-action version of a cartoon movie from the 90s that is now being remade into a Disney Plus movie, I'm not really plugging it, I'm making fun of it. I'm saying that this movie, I'm making fun of this one scene, basically. I did it before in one of my CalCat things, too, so making fun of it here is funny, too. It's just this one scene that they did cut out of the trailer that was in the older trailer, per my suggestion, actually, because it's not accurate at all. They put geisha paint on Mulan. And the reason that wouldn't be accurate is she's not Japanese. They would not put geisha paint on a Chinese person. I heard this from a Chinese person. And a Japanese person as well. So yes. I also said that that's not accurate. Also, they did a play years ago. My niece was in a play, and somebody said that there too. It wasn't just me. It was some dude behind me was like, that's not accurate. He said that to me. I was like, yeah, I know. I was just going to say that, actually. So, oh, sure. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't accurate. Yeah, because the Japanese have a slight more complexion, slight more olive complexion. So because they slightly, a little darker, a little tan than Chinese, they would put on lighter face makeup to look lighter. So they would look more like mainland Chinese people. That's what the geishas were. Ladies of court. They were sort of like in England. They were misrepresented by white culture that went there and visited them later and thought they were just like prostitutes or something. No, they're not. They're ladies of court. They're for like escorts, but not that kind of escort. They're like courtesans, basically. So they would go with you to parties and stuff if you were aristocracy. And you'd be like, I have this lady on my arm on. It wouldn't mean anything. You couldn't do anything with her because then the samurai would get you afterward if you did anything bad. So you weren't allowed to. So yeah. But you could hang out with them, I guess. And they would dress up and they would put on light makeup to look more Chinese. Or just to look fairer. Maybe it was just to look fairer. Could have been that. But yeah, they ladies of court. Courtesans. That would be the English translation. Roughly. Sort of. Kind of. Yeah. Unlike in Shogun the movie where they got it wrong years ago. And that's what all these other ones have copied is Shogun. Even Joy Luck Club kind of got it wrong. Even Members of a Geisha got it wrong. They cast a bunch of Chinese people as the Japanese people. It's like, no, they have to have names like Tanemura and Nagasaki and Yamato and stuff like that. They have to have names that sound Japanese because that's Japanese people. But in Milan, they're supposed to be Chinese, so they would have names like Ching, and Sao, and Milan, and Chong, things like that. Chinese sounding names. Korean, they'd have Korean sounding names like Kim and Pak. And Suk. Yeah, so they could be Koreans, I guess. So I decided to throw this little gag in there. Instead of the Dinowats getting painted on, it was the girls deciding to paint Scout Sport to look like Milan, which is just they didn't really, but because you can't do that to the figure, but I just implied it. I think it actually is pretty funny. So it actually works. He's like a Techo Knight, and he's Geisha paint. Well, not really, but I just pretended he has paint on. I thought I would add that in there just to explain what was going on in the making of. Hopefully that scene is not actually in the remake. But I won't know because I don't have Disney Plus. I'm not going to pay $30 extra to have Disney Plus just to watch The Mandalorian and then Milan. That's it. Maybe Artemis Fowl to make fun of it. So Transformers making of, yeah. Transformers, so this is connected to the last episode and to Corrosion of War. Vicariously through that spark that's been reunited and recombined. Because Night Racer is not Chess, clearly. But the spark that was in the girl, chick's name. But anyway, the spark that was in, gotta figure that out. Windblade? Windblade, yeah. Windblade's name. Yeah, Windblade's, the spark that entered her was actually Chass's, not Chass's unborn like spark child thing, because that doesn't make sense. But rather from Shockwave. But rather because that would be messed up. But no, she's actually Chass, who was killed by Shockwave. So Rhakshi is Chass. She was Chass in a past life. They reformatted her as Rhakshi. So in this version. So. And that's a connection to the other story. It's like, oh, she's Chass. It's like the search for Spock when he comes back. But not really. Sort of. So that's cool. Oh, yeah, Chass. Cool. So we have this continuity of this other stuff going on. Connects all the stories. Even though they're all supposed to be discrete episodes, we have this connection between them that even though they're all supposed to be different versions of the universe, they're kind of connected. We have our Carta characters that appear as Transformers. We have some of theirs appearing as Transformers. And we mix them together because Chass was one of the one of the characters from Carruthers' script, Bobby Carruthers' script, Dr. Carruthers' script. So it's kind of cool doing that. With a PSA at the beginning. That one, yeah, hasn't got a lot of views though. I don't think it's like, yeah, it's not terribly serious. Anyway, so that is all for the evening, because doing a night shot in here would be kind of weird. Wouldn't look good until we get more lighting. Yeah, so otherwise we'd have a lot of shadows. Anyway, so yeah, so Chas does come back. We did hint at that in the last episode. Who's she gonna come back as? Well, when you see the making of thing, you'll be like, oh, okay, that totally works. It somehow totally works. And Raksha and Rhakshi do sound like Indian names. There's sort of this, sort of a little bit of Hindi Sikh stuff going on in there, or Hindi or Sikh stuff going on in there. So a little bit of Taoist and Buddhist thrown in there, just to be weird. I got Christian themes in the last one, but this one has Taoist and Buddhist in it. Just to be bizarre, because Transformers probably do have a little Buddhist in them, just because Japanese. Yeah, so Transformers was a Japanese toy line. Diaclone and Takara Tomy were doing those. And Diaclone and a couple other toy lines. And later Hasbro bought out, the Tonka people bought out GoBots in 1992 or so. So they became part of them. But GoBots was a separate thing. And then they've done some of these crossover things. It's very interesting. So all Transformers MUSH also is paying homage to the UK comics and the American comics and IDW and Dark Horse and some of those others as well. And Marvel. A lot of Marvel. There's more Marvel, I would say, in this. And yes, we can get away with it. Despite what they say on Trek Core when they're like, no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, it's like, how do you know I don't know what I'm talking about? See my other channels? I know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's weird that I do. Because I've read a lot of Transformers stuff. Mostly I read the trade. So, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah. Transformers. Chas is based on a character by Carruthers. Moonracer. She's being played by Moonracer, and there's Chromia. And that's Lancer. Transformers Lancer. But Lancer in this is Windbreaker in the script, but it's going to be Lancer. Yeah, so note that too, that's Lancer. It's not really Windbreaker, it's Lancer, and this is a Gestalt. You use all these to make a Gestalt. This one is an extra Decepticon one, and it's the first ever Nightbird toy, which is awesome. I had to get that because yeah, and she's more expensive than all the other ones in the Gestalt. Even more expensive than this one. Right here. By a little bit. Just a little bit. The Gestalt was Amazon Select. So if you want to go on Amazon and look that up, you can get a Nightbird, a Lancer. Firestar was available, but she was way more than these guys were. Because some scalpers got in there and hiked up the price. So Firestar they were renaming Novastar, but it's Firestar. She would have been there too. She probably would have had her mold. And that's RC from Generations back there. She doesn't have any dialogue in this movie, but she is there, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, so there's a little bit of a behind the scenes and getting Prowl and Jazz drunk. So yeah, I included Jazz in the story. I just didn't make Jazz the guy with the sister because it really doesn't make sense. There's no canon sister of Jazz. So it completely changes the dynamic of the story by making Jazz Scout. Making him Scout instead, Sport instead, and making Sport and making this Rhakshi. It changes the dynamic entirely. It makes it more fluid. The characters are lovingly, playfully sort of. Yeah, it's a fun story. It's nothing like bad. The Night Racer does make the suggestion that it could have led to an orgy, but no, it's not. Anyway, so no, that's not going to happen. That would be the slashy R-rated version that we didn't show. That's not in the script, so we're going to do that. Nope, not doing that. And this hilarious is use the footage. Oh, the song that I did in there. I did that. Put that in the movie where they're playing the music, and it's clearly the It was just me doing that. Which is the de facto go-to G1 Transformers rock music that they played in the background during the cartoon when they couldn't get free music way back then. So they didn't want to have to pay anybody. So they made up this cheesy score that kind of sounded like Transformers, but wasn't quite Transformers. G.I. Joe had a cooler one. They had Code Slither. That was cooler. Yeah. Code Slither, the heavy metal machine. No. Back in the day. Lion. Yeah, so yeah, there's it's kind of funny. So here we are, and the lighting's getting really bad. Now I look sardonic and evil, like I'm a horror host, which I'm not. And yeah, so yeah. I wouldn't have any copyrighted free view movies to show as a horror host. I did cross over with that earlier, but so that's all for tonight. I decided to add a little more just to what's going on. The chast thing is not terribly important, but it's kind of cool that it's in there because it's a continuity with the other story. In some ways, it makes it sound like, oh, this happened. It's part of the lexicon. Yes. And, it's also interesting that somehow we knew some elements of some of those guys in Trek Corps cannot explain. They cannot explain this. How Corrosion of War, my website channel thing, is very similar to War for Cybertron, the game, and very similar to War for Cybertron, the miniseries. And that it went away for several months while they were producing the War for Cybertron miniseries, and then now it's coming back after the miniseries was finished, or the first season was finished. So yeah, it's yeah. Is it a coincidence? You decide. Okay, the 10th, and this is a slight scene pickup revision thingy. But we're still going. So it's mainly a close-up on him. I'm saying the line about everything else worked, but he was a little blurry. So I want to get him saying the line about the complex. That's all this really is, and then we go on to the next thing. And the ending, which isn't there. So there's two things that are happening here. What's going on to him? I have taken a small page out of this from the rule book of Sisters. Not directly, but indirectly from experience. There was a hilarious story that is kind of in here anyway. It's just not spelled out. It's in here anyway that there's like suggestive gender things going on here. But what's going on here is that Rhakshi is infatuated with Prowl. Now, when it was Jazzy, it makes more sense. They were the same size. They were roughly similar. She was just a troublemaker. But the character that we've got in here is clearly way taller and kind of ridiculous, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so it does come up in the script. It's not like we're just making this out of whole cloth. So it is in there that Prowl is taken. Yes, he's taken. He's got a lover, but we don't see this. It's just that he's got one. She's infatuated with him. It's in the story. It's a MUSH story, and he has to like explain who the lover is. Now, I'm not saying the lover is necessarily Jazz, because that would be the brother. That would be in the original script was Jazz and Jazzy. It's someone else, but in this version, I've changed it because Jazz is no longer the brother. Jazz is just there. So why not have him swing both sides of the fence? So the Starscream part relates to that. And of course, Starscream is totally bi. And yeah, Autobots probably don't really think anything of the gender politics and all that anyway. Males and females. They clearly started this series with two bizarre Transformer literal sex swapping characters in Corrosion of War. So and the last one after that was about other stuff that was darker, but this one's more fun and lighthearted. So I decided that they should just Yeah, so everybody knows except Jazzy. It's related to an old story where, and I've encountered it before in school as well, so it's not necessarily a sister story. It's a girl story. So I've encountered this before. There was people. It's more like the school one. Okay, it's like the school one. There was a girl in college who was enamored of the professor. He wasn't interested. He really wasn't interested. There was a professor, and she was enamored of him. And the other students found out, and she was really, really clingy, and she would follow students around and accuse them of stuff they didn't do. She's really weird. And so apparently at one point, she turns around to one of her girlfriends and says the professor, oh, that professor's hot and everything. And the girl looks at her like kind of annoyed because it was the 90s. And she goes, you do realize the professor's gay, right? Really gay. I mean, really, really gay. And she's like, what? But it can't be. He's affectionate and interesting and clever and he so connects with us and everything. And she went on this letter diatribe of how he was emotionally nicer than other guys. That's because he understands girls because he is gay. That's why. So this professor dude, was totally into dudes. He wasn't interested in her. Besides, if he was straight, he wouldn't be interested in her anyway, because she was cray-cray. She was real cray-cray. But she was white, so I'm just being silly. Anyway, so yeah, but yeah. But yes, so there's a little bit of flamboyance in here. It's not any kind of a message. It's just that it's in the story. And I decided to have the character kind of play up on a little playful scene just to establish, okay, well, yeah, they're fluid about their sexuality. They don't really have, they're just, the Transformers are enlightened robots, see, and they don't have the same moral values and such as humans would, because they're robots and they can just change shells and sparks at will and change into other things, right? Cars and things. So by their nature, they would be automorphic characters anyway. They would be able to transform into a dude or a female. It doesn't matter. They have no gender. The implication in Corrosion of War Without End was that they developed this gender thing predominantly from encountering male and female other life forms. And maybe before humans. Had to be before humans. So that's why that happened. So otherwise they wouldn't have. They would have just been they wouldn't have had gender, because why would they? They're robots. They wouldn't. So I think it's kind of progressive that this story kind of goes there and just hints at it. It doesn't really. Yeah, it doesn't get kinky or anything. It's just weird. But so we're gonna go on now. More story. This is a scene that's kind of in the script, so we're going to put it back. So it is technically not a pickup scene because we're still filming it, so it's not a pickup scene. It's more like fixing a scene. So it's not. It's still in production, so it's not a pickup. Okay, this is a scene with Starscream and Prowl, and explains more as to why they didn't mind sift him. That's going to be immediately after the attack. Back when they were in prison. So this is what's going on here. Yeah. Okay, this scene is them slightly revision from the other story. This is Alita 1 and RC explaining their other lives. Instead of having Sport do it, because it didn't make sense that Sport would have done it. Makes sense that these two would have done it with kind of continuity with the earlier scene. This is not going to be long. Still going to follow the script and the dialogue and be still within the round. So, action. Okay, what's been changed is this part where she goes on about how Jazz and 3 million years ago, in the original script she was Jazz's sister, and it doesn't apply here. So this middle part is not there. So that's what happened. So, making a So the ending of this one, we have extra lamp back there. So yeah, this is a wrap on Sibling Rivalry. It's a wrap. So hopefully the making of it is not too much more. And I added just a wee bit more on the end to make it 80 minutes. So that's, yeah. But it's part of the story, the Legion Maximo thing, the whole backstory of the Corrosion War, the little bit of the extra stuff, the ship not escaping. It's on script either. They presumably she took the ship, but in this version she's going to go with the other ship because it makes sense. She's going to go with the ship she was assigned to. They're up to something, we're not sure what. And at the end, the bad guy, it's in the script that the bad guy was confronted by some of the shady characters. They weren't Decepticons, they were other shady people that confronted him. And it was meant to be like used later. But I decided it should be Megatron. And yeah, Megatron doesn't kill him. Megatron just sort of, gives him a message. He's going to be all alone. Her message. It's supposed to be an ex-boyfriend in the story originally. Now it's an ex-girlfriend. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics going on here. Different things. And the Transformers, as I said in the earlier commentary, wasn't... the genders in Transformers don't make sense. I know they're there because they didn't want to make it a sausage fest and have it be all like just guys and guy toys and all that. And so they introduced some girl ones in the hopes that it didn't look as male, completely male-oriented. Although it kind of doesn't really make sense that they would have girlfriends, boyfriends, gender, and marriage and children and all that. Because that would be really weird if they did that. But in this version, kind of thrown that in there and said it's to them, it's almost amoral to have like offspring. There's like a thing against it because like they're created by the vector sigma, or they're created by the budding, or they're created by the joining of the sparks or whatever. They have different ways of reproducing than humans do. So they don't need to have gender because they're robots. They don't really need that, but they're just emulating what they've encountered in the galaxy, which is far more interesting and everywhere. So they could have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. It doesn't mean they're gay, straight, bi, whatever. They're just friendly toward that. And in their universe, that's perfectly all right because they're not humans, they're aliens. And their society is completely different than ours. It makes you wonder, like, if they encountered aliens, would they know that? Would they be completely different about that? Would they be offended by a handshake or something? Would they be offended by a smile, as the Sakara in the distant Canary space? They're offended by a smile. You smile at them because they're cats. but yeah, or something like that. Yeah, this was Sibling Rivalry. It was not necessarily based on anything, although in this act here, I did ramp up some of it to make it based sort of on experience, just to add it to the story because it was funny. So I did add a little bit, not to pad it, but to develop the characters more. This dynamic of this love triangle that was going on between Rhakshi, the brother, and Prowl, is revealed that Prowl isn't interested in the love triangle. He's basically like, I'm taken, So it's a love quadrangle because it's actually jazz. It's not said, but that's who it is. The thing that happened with before was the student at the school, the university, who was obsessed with the male professor, who was everybody in the classroom knew was clearly very flamboyant. And there was this professor who was flamboyant, and she didn't realize that. And they all looked at her like, "What?" So there's a scene in there that's similar to that. And it's hinted at in the script that this was the case. And this is a very well written story. So it went well in 5 days. Shoot, but it was. We're not sure who Jazzy was, even after looking it up, trying to find this person that was anonymous as Jazzy. We don't know who this was. It's probably, my guess is it's a euphemism for a a friend of or related to Raksha, who was the creator of of Moon Racer. Night Racer, not Moon Racer, Night Racer. The little blue Corvette. The blue, it's kind of a Corvette. Trans Am. Little blue transformed Transformer. Minicon, as well as other things that she was made of. I'm using a Stealth Bumblebee and Blue Bumblebee and Shatter as from Bumblebee material. And I also threw in a cameo from not just Shatter, but Bumblebee from Bumblebee movie. Shows him at the very end. It is in the script. He shows up to escort them to the ship, and apparently that's not where they're headed. So, yeah, it's not a setup for a sequel. It's just the series continues. So, yeah, this is its own self-contained thing. You can watch it and go like, okay, she's doing things. She's still on probation. It ends with that. Because after all, in that previous story before she did kill those two Decepticons. But she faked that, apparently. So, apparently she faked getting the probation. I'm not sure. It's a little confusing as to what was going on there. I'm thinking, even in the script, it's confusing. Not sure how to rectify that. I could have a line of dialogue, but it wouldn't make sense, really. Let's just say that she faked part of it. Let's say the Prime knew she was making stuff up. So that's fine. So yeah, she faked the results of the thing, not the probation itself. So she's just basically back where she was, doing what she was doing. So yeah. So I don't think I need to fix that. I think I can leave it. I think I will throw in a little bit of something though to kind of explain that, just separately. Okay, pause. Yeah. So this is it. This is it for this though. This was Sibling Rivalry. Actually, this gag that I threw in here is actually in the script. Just to inform you that there it is. But the idea that none of them transformed in the story, this last part, is actually in the script. So it's not just me saying, haha, they didn't transform in this episode. It's in the script. Me again. Okay, this was that scene about the promotion. To clear up for the audience, the probation thing. That's all this was. So that was that. And that's pretty much it. We have wrapped Sibling Rivalry. This is making of. The script is 78 minutes long. This is going to come out to be about 80 when you put it all together. And it's a movie. Another trans tech movie. And it's a fun one. Oh, yeah. So, there we go. Okay, this is going to be an added scene to explain the faked probation line that Prime said. This would be immediately after they talk to her, but before they send her over to meet with Bumblebee. So it's like right in there. And he talked to... Day 6, the 12th. This is actually scene pickup. We watched the footage and there is a blurry Starscream. So this is a scene pickup. And this is making of. And yeah. So let's just shoot this scene. So that was just a pickup scene on the set here. Brief pickup scene, and this scene is immediately before. It's the prison scene. It's the scene where he's taken away. It's right after that, inside the prison, and the Decepticon prison. I don't know why the Decepticons would have a prison on the Autobot planet, but they do apparently. But yeah. But yeah. So. Maybe that's why Draconis found them so quickly. He's like, oh, I know where they are. Yeah. Anyway, I hadn't thought about that. So just, but yeah, there's some interesting... Yeah, and then I thought to throw in he was blurry. Starscream was blurry. I just had to throw in that little extra line about, oh, it's technically not gay bashing because they're both already there. So it's just he's being cruel, period. It has nothing to do with the gender. It's like he's being mean because he's being mean because he's a Decepticon. Yeah, so it's a little messed up, but yeah, they don't show it, so yeah, there's that. Also in research to the reference to the jazzy stories, apparently this was rewritten twice again. This version of the story is 2000, but there was a 2003 version, which we're using the 2000 version. And there's, with some of, I read some of the 2003 ones, so some of that is in here. But the lexicon version that's from 2003, which is archive that picked it up later, Walters and Raksha and some of the other people did. I think Walters is the editor, but I'm not sure. Actually, one of the editors edited the story in 2003 and 2008. Rachel Walters. I don't know who this is, but they edited it. It wasn't them, though. This is someone else. Actually, also did some other short stories. Although this one is the penultimate one, it's the one that gets the most play and has four glowing reviews, probably written by her friends. It was, near as I can tell, the person writing this was probably a teenager, probably underage, at the time, in 2003. It is now 17 years later, so she's probably well into her 20s, if not early 30s. And this story is considerably changed from the original in the sense because we had to change jazz and jazzy because she decided to put her name all over it to Sport and Rhakshi. So they're characters we have in the arsenal. So it's Carta Beast Wars characters, Rhakshi and Night Prime, who is playing Sport, Spoil Sport's son. So we have, and she's Windblade's daughter. Not Night Racer adopted her, but she's Windblade's daughter. And as a Spark, she was previously Chas. But in the story, that's kind of vague in the story. The creators are just the creators, meaning her parents, and they're not, it's kind of vague. There's also reference in the guides and lexicons to some of the parents and grandparents that reportedly it was dedicated to the original story. They're probably the archivist's parent, so I looked it up, and it's the archivist. It's not them. It's not the person that wrote it. It's the archive was dedicated to the person. So we don't know who the anonymous Jazzy is. There's other Jazzies later. There's a Dodd Jazzy from the current period that wrote some stuff for Armada and Cybertron and stuff. That is probably a distant relation or maybe daughter. And it is 17 years later, so she could very well be the daughter of whoever wrote this. But I have not read any of her online stories, and she is a minor, so I'm not going to put them up there. Then yeah. So Dodd Jazzy is not on here. Yeah, and there's other Jazzies that have no relation to this. This name is really common and really hard to find. But we did find the archives, the 3 archives of the story. It's still online since 2008. So in the credits, it's mentioned that there's a later archive, but this story is clearly the 2000 version for the 2003 Transtech magazine before they released the 2003 reissue using the Transtech magazine footage. Story. So the Lexicon archive, although they don't know it, the Atomicon character in that is actually the Calcat show that put that up there. So yeah, so the editor on that one should say Calcat because yeah, but it doesn't. But the other one later is Walker. So, but she's the editor. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just who's ever running the page now. The original URL is dead. But the current lexicon URL is an archive, and it's somebody else running it. At least 2008. I don't know if anything is updated since then. If she wants to comment on the story, I guess. Well, we had to change it because the person was using their real name to play the character, and it threw everything off. So we used Rhakshi is not a real name, so we used that. And we also set it up in Corrosion of War that it would be her in Sport. They would be the brother and sister in the story. Instead of Jazz, who canon-wise, does not have a brother or sister. So it wouldn't be Jazz. It should have been Sunstreaker and Sideswipe. Interestingly enough, there are 2 or 3 other stories called Sibling Rivalry. One of them is a Beast Wars one. One of them is a Sideswipe and Sunstreaker one, which is very similar to the works of Frederick the Racker or David, the nephew. And it could be something that he put up there just for fun. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, so that would be cool. But I don't think it's him. But we're not going to use any more Rhakshi stories that I know of because the other stories are shorter. And I think they're like a page or something. And they seem to be this story. They're just other versions of it. So I think we got all 4 parts in here of the 4 stories. So it's like there's four complete stories done as a full file. So that's cool. So I think they're all here in this one episode. So that's awesome. So whoever this anonymous person is, cool. It's still PG. There's a few little suggestions in there, but it's still PG. And she did not have specifically gay characters in mind at all. But I threw them in there because they're implied. And I thought it would be a fun way to have the Prowl character get out of have her being obsessed with him by having him say, "Oh, she's totally not interested at all." Just thought that would be fun, so that was added. But this is why at all he likes dudes, dude bots, but they're Transformers, so they have a different society and moral makeup than humans. Also, there's no humans in it because the humans are having a pandemic and they're not allowing any transit to any ships to go to Cybertron. So, yeah, that's why they're not in it. Convenient way to make the whole series with nothing but Transformer robots and not go to Earth. Anyway, the original story did go to Earth. Had them on Earth and the Ark base and all that. But I thought, no, it's just Cybertron. And Decathlon was either a planet or a city, so I was never quite clear on that. I think it's supposed to be a city in this version. But I decided to make it more dramatic by saying it's Decathlon, the planet. So maybe the Decathlon city is merely a city of them. That the Decathlon Autobots or neutrals went there and formed a city on Cybertron, but then when they left to go to the planet, they named it after the city on Cybertron. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, so there's a planet and a city. The city's older. So they're a colony. We have never been there. And we keep implying that there's going to be something with the Liege Maximo, which would technically be a cult, because the Liege Maximo was one of the fallen primes of the 13 primes. So he's gone. But yeah. And the Fallen is a Megatronus. They got that wrong in the movies. He shouldn't have been there. He should have been long gone. But oh well. Actually, Sentinel Prime shouldn't have been there either, really. That should have been probably Vector Prime. That would have made more sense. But Vector Prime wouldn't have done that stuff. So it was Solus Prime, maybe. But Solus Prime is a female, isn't she? Anyway, all the primes. The primes. Autobots transform. Anyway, so that's a little update on what's going on. It doesn't need a PSA at the beginning. Just it is what it is. It's really obvious, so it doesn't need any explanation. So yeah, this is making of, and this is enjoy Sibling Rivalry, story of Rhakshi, or formerly Jazzy. This one's drunk. I've had too much of the good stuff. Oh God. Okay. That was. Well, if it isn't some rejects from a Martin Scorsese movie. Well, if it isn't some rejects from a Martin Scorsese movie. Well, if it isn't some rejects from a Martin Scorsese movie. Oh, Jesus. Then what do you want? 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 What do you want?
I wish to know the secret of your relationships. I wish to know the secret of your relationships. I wish to know the secret of your relationships. I wish to know the secret of your relationships. I wish to know the secret of your relationships. I wish to know the secret of your relationships.
What?
What are you talking about, Starscream? What are you talking about, Starscream? What are you talking about, Starscream? Come now, Autobot. Come now, Autobot. We both know that you've flit both sides of the fence. Come now, Autobot. We know you've flit both sides of the fence. Come now, Autobot. We know you've flit both sides of the fence. Come now, Autobot. We know you've flit both sides of the fence. Come now, Autobot. We know you've flit both sides of the fence. I will never reveal my... I will never reveal that. 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 We could try the Mind Sifter on you. We could try the Mind Sifter on you, but... I'm bored. We could try the Mind Sifter on you, but I think instead we'll just beat the shit out of you. We could try the Mind Sifter on you instead, but I think I'll just beat the shit out of you. We could try the Mind Sifter on you instead, but instead we'll just beat the shit out of you. We could try the Mind Sifter on you instead, but we could just beat the shit out of you instead. And we could try the Mind Sifter on you, or just beat the shit out of you instead. I'll never give you the location of my lovers. I'll never give you the location of my relations. I'll never give you the location of my relations. I'll never give you the location of my relations. Very well, brute